welcome to a very special edition of our HiLo Gather conversation. It is February, so we are talking about relationships today, and we have some very special guests. I recently saw a meme that said, the best part of relationships is that the person you trust the most in this world doesn't believe you that you're not sitting on the remote until you prove it. And so we have brought the people that we share remotes with and search for remotes with. This is my husband, Carter McDaniel. He is the executive pastor here at Central Assembly, and around our house he's known as the best taco maker and also the person who can Tetris all of the dishes into the dishwasher for one load.
And most likely to be sitting on the remote.
And hi, we are the Gosses. Glad to be back with you again this month. And I am very happy to have my husband, Steve Goss, here with us today. He is an assistant basketball coach and professor at Evangel, and I'm the best dad to two littles that love to wrestle with him, and I'm thankful that they do that more with him than with me.
And we are the Barretts. So I'm happy to have John Barrett, my husband, with us today. He works with Project Rescue, and I do too. So we work together, we live together, we raise the babies together, we do everything together, and we just love it. So he and I met here at Central so many years ago. We got married here, we had our babies here, dedicated those babies, so we love doing life at Central, and I'm just happy he's here with us today.
Great to be here.
So this month, as we were talking about love and relationships and all that stuff, we thought, what would be fun to share with you? And for us, I think we always, for me, for sure, I love hearing the behind the scenes of other people's relationships and family life. I love hearing things like, oh, they fight about that too, or they struggle with that too. That makes me feel a little bit better about any problems that I have.
Jen often will walk into the bedroom and say, is it just us that deals with this? Is it only us? So it's really great, I think, to know that these are the things that we all we're navigating, together as a couple, as parents, as husband and wife. So just to share some of those things with you all, so we're not alone. So it's it'll be good.
So one of our real life couple stories is happened when we were first married, probably within the first 5 years of marriage. And at that time, I was going to work before Carter would leave for work, and I was getting home from work before he would get home. So I was getting home from work, and our ceiling fan would be on basically every day. And we had gotten one of those remotes for our ceiling fan and light so that we could turn it off, from our bed if we wanted to. So one day I casually mentioned to Carter, hey, did you know that you're leaving the ceiling fan on every day? And he was like, no, I'm not. And I was like,
very defensive.
Yes, you are. And he was like, no, I'm not. And I was like, well, it's on every day that I get home. And he says to me, well, have you ever thought that maybe just some stray radio waves are turning our fan on?
Naturally.
And
of course.
Clearly.
I mean, what else?
In the moment...
Neighbor's garage door. It could be a lot of things.
Sure.
Lots of things.
A stray radio waves. In the moment, I heard this voice that said, you know what, Jill, you could just be gracious right now. And then the discussion would be over. You could just be like, okay, well, let's just watch it and see. But instead, I chose not to listen to that voice. I didn't want to be gracious in that moment. I wanted to be right. And so I reared up and I was like, do you really think it's more likely that stray radio waves are turning on the fan or that you are just forgetting to turn it off? And he reared right back up and was like, I think it's a lot more likely that stray radio waves are turning on the fan. So
not my most gracious moment.
So we ended that discussion in complete disagreement. And a few nights later, we're both sitting in bed. The remote is over there on the wall. And we're reading. And all of a sudden, the fan turns on. And I feel Carter turn to me.
Vindication.
And I could not believe. I was so mad at those stray radio waves that had made me clearly not right. But it was a good thing to learn to remember to be obedient to that voice that says, you know what, you could just be gracious right now. And that's such a good lesson for all of our relationships, not just our married relationships, but with our kids at times, with our friends, with our family members. So that is something that I have carried with me for many years when I was not gracious.
And really, that would just solve so many of our problems, wouldn't it? If we all just chose to do that in those moments. Because how many discussions do we have throughout the days and weeks and months about things like that don't really matter, but we need to be right.
I think, yeah, the in the moment part, I think, is one of the toughest things, because I feel like if I can get away, or if I have time and I think about it, I'm like, ooh, that may not have been good to say. It's just that in the moment where if you can kind of have the self-control, the patience to say, I'm not going to say what's running through my mind right now, or Carter, I'm not going to say, you know what, I was right. And yeah,
Which unfortunately is exactly what I said.
but yeah, to that point, it's just, sometimes it's just a little time and a little patience goes a long way. I know for us, it goes a long way.
Yeah, most definitely. I have much better perspective like 2 hours after the conversation than in the middle of the conversation when being right becomes more important. Sure. So yeah, we're all guilty of that at times.
I find myself often say things in that moment, and as it's coming out, I go, that was not. Now where am I going to go? Like, what's going to happen here? I knew not to do this, but now how do I back down? And I think that it actually makes it harder to back up and show that grace, right? It's like I'm always trying to work on trying to stop that in the moment. I think that's really hard though.
We talk a lot about, after those moments, like how do I back up from those moments, about mending what has just been said. And so I know that's been one of the things we even work on now, is how do we mend those moments that have been kind of the slighted jabs or the I was right, kind of thing. And I know when we talk with the kids, it's funny when you start hearing your relationship advice for your children during their like sibling squabbles, where you're like, I should remember that a little bit more between this nap too. Because we tell them the same thing, hey, it's so much more important to be kind than to be right. Yes, you're right, but how you do it, you need to choose to be kind. And that plays out, I know, so often for us, and especially I would imagine for a lot of parents, when you've been with your kids either all day long or you've had busyness going on with all your stuff, it's just so much easier to sometimes just pop that out where it's not kind, because you're like, I have been kind all day long. I've been kind all day long. And like you're grateful that you have the person that's like, okay, I give you that pass, but yet you don't want to wound. You want to treasure that heart, or you want the Holy Spirit to guide your steps, that little voice that you were hearing that says, choose grace. Choose to look like me right now. And I think we're all a work in progress with that one. I'm just thankful that He shows us that grace so that we're able to work that out. It's a constant becoming together.
And we were at church just a few weeks ago, and Pastor Jim he was talking about politics though. But he said, do you want to be right, or do you want to protect your relationships? Yeah. And so we kind of looked at each other like, that's great, not just for politics, that's great for marriage. Like, do you want to be right, or do you want to preserve the relationship that you have, with your spouse? And so that kind of spoke to us a little bit as well, just in that moment. So it was good. It was good.
I know one of the ways that we have a funny story too. Like, I think we've passed these stories along a little bit. And Jill and I were actually shopping right after Christmas, and I found a Christmas ornament that was like 75% off, remember? And it was a cinnamon roll. And she was like, why do you want an ornament of a cinnamon roll? And I'm like, but mine and Steve's first fight was about cinnamon rolls. And
Discussion.
Discussion. And so we're like, so we need to document that now, because we can laugh about it now, but we couldn't then. And it was...
Yeah, this is absolute true story. We've been married just a couple months.
True.
At that time, it was a Saturday morning. Janet's job required her to be out pretty early on that Saturday morning with work. And so I was at home. I woke up, mind you, I'm 2 months removed from being a bachelor, and there's a can of cinnamon rolls in the refrigerator, and we've all had those cinnamon rolls. Well, as a bachelor, that was a meal for me. Like, the whole can, 8 cinnamon rolls, don't judge me. So that was a meal for me. So I got up and I made cinnamon rolls for breakfast. That was what I had for breakfast that morning. And Janet comes rolling back in kind of right before lunch or something, and the evidence of that is in the sink. You've got the pan with the 8 squares on there, and you ate the cinnamon rolls? Yeah. Why did you eat the cinnamon rolls? Because it was breakfast. Like, that's just That's what I'd always done. What I didn't know is what was a routine, just breakfast in my house growing up, and then obviously as a bachelor, and then was different in Janet's house growing up, that cinnamon rolls were family occasions, special occasions, important moments, and so that expectation of what the cinnamon rolls were for had not been clearly discussed prior to that. But now we immediately made a change, and I got 5 and she got 3. And then we had 1 kid and I got 4 and she got 3 and a kid got 1. Now we have 2 kids and I get 3 and she gets 3 and each kid gets 1. And I'm losing cinnamon rolls in this battle. But the expectations have been clearly defined now about the power of cinnamon rolls.
You've discussed it.
We have discussed it.
it. So.
Spoken expectations are much easier to meet than unspoken expectations.
That needs to be stitched on a pillow right there.
With a cinnamon roll in the bottom corner.
As a side note, when I was growing up, I always wanted to be like 6'4", 6'5", like you. So I ate all the healthy stuff. You're telling me all I had to do was eat cinnamon rolls?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
You got 6'5" and you ate 8 cinnamon rolls at a time?
Yeah, it helped. Yeah, the whole can. So.
Fair enough.
It's so funny, but so true. Like, you have to communicate those expectations, because otherwise, when you don't share those and you don't clearly lay those out, then you just build up this resentment and frustration, and just leads to nowhere good. We were kind of reminiscing the other day about our premarital counseling, which was, I'm just going to say, a little bit of a joke. We found this counselor who we knew. She was a family friend who already loved us, and we just had one intense, it was called like a 3-hour session with her, and she pretty much spent the 3 hours just telling us how wonderful we were and how well prepared we were for marriage. And she had us pass this little
the little bear.
Stuffed bear back and forth, like, you hold the bear and it's your turn to talk and you share what your expectations are, and then you know, and whatever. So she did, it was helpful because she did talk about expectations and how it's so important when you go into marriage, how you have to clearly lay those out. But at, with 20 years old, we're sharing back and forth, and it was just such a waste of time. I mean, I think that we should, love each other.
Right.
And
it was such platitudes and such unicorns and rainbows. This is so easy. We just agree that we're gonna always love each other every day, over and over. And the counselor.
And then going back and forth, I hear you, and I agree. And so she was like, you guys are set. You don't have any worries. And so we go into it, and then life starts, and you're like, oh, that was not effective. And then those expectations, they keep changing, right? The way you laid it out in the beginning, then you have kids, then you change jobs, then COVID comes, and expectations and what you need on a daily basis in your relationships and in parenting roles and in your home, they keep changing. So you just have to keep communicating.
Yeah, and I'm a sports guy, so I always I love the Mike Tyson quote, which says, everyone has a plan until you get hit in the mouth. And it's that's true. We sat there in premarital counseling, we got it all planned out. We're gonna have this many kids. We're gonna love each other every day. We got this. But even within the first year, this happens. Oh, we weren't expecting that. Or, oh, okay, here comes our first child. Oh, it's a girl. I don't know how to deal with girls. Stuff things just adjust. And so it's that constant, you have to sit down and clearly define as you go because the expectations, they're going to shift. Those goalposts are going to move one way or the other, and you got to be prepared for it because it's going to happen. So.
I know for us, one of the things that when you talk about just shifting, this was something that wasn't planned. I know we were married 2 years, and what do they say, the top 5 stressors in life? I think we had 3 of them in that first couple of years. We moved to Springfield from Florida. My mom passed away, and we started new jobs. And it was wow, and I know one of the things, because Springfield had been more Steve's than mine, with having gone to college here, that it just kind of, you're finding your identity again, but you're also finding how that works as a couple together, and I know that stems for us even more so with when we lost our first child. That was another big talk about, like a punch in the mouth. But one of the best things that I think that we learned there, but I think we still continue to maybe learn again now parenting with our 2, is that when those processes come where you can't plan them out, that there was more than just my processing and Steve's processing, but we had to do that together, because those big changes that you can't plan on, if you only do it alone, then that doesn't allow the couple to keep moving forward. And we had to be okay with standing still for a little while to be able to work through things. And so I think sometimes it's not just the passing the bear back and forth, I mean, it is. But ultimately, it's saying, hey, this bear's going to change. This is going to be a bigger dynamic. And what are we going to learn? And there were times, that we didn't get it right. There are times we still don't get that part right. But it is that reminder of we both have to process, and being okay that we do it differently. I expected Steve to process just like me because I was doing it right. But again, it kind of goes back to, again, that selflessness in nature, which isn't easy for any of us, but to say, hey, I'm not doing it right for you, I'm doing it right for me. How are you doing it, and then how do we do it together? And I know that's a heavier nugget, but that's kind of one of those, you can't plan on those things at the beginning, but those are the things that you say, the better and the worse, and the hard stuff. So I'd rather do it with than without, for sure.
And then always comes back to then choosing grace again.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you don't do it, when you don't get it right and you don't process it right or whatever, then choosing that grace.
And I think it's even harder when going through extremely stressful times, or, even less stressful times, like building a house, bringing home a new baby and not sleeping. Those are all times, we haven't built a house, but other stressful times, that it's really hard for me. I know I can recognize it's a lot harder for me to show grace at those times. Like after our first baby, I realized when I'm not sleeping, I am focused on how many times have I emptied the dishwasher, how many times have I gotten up in the night, when
So true.
it's it's harder to do that. And so with our second and third babies, I was like, you know what, I know this about myself, and so I'm aware of this, and I'm going to maybe not say all the things that I think, and I'm just going to know that this is probably not the truth of what I'm doing. It's just my eyes are very clouded right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You talked about the cinnamon rolls and how the expectations in your home growing up were very different from your home growing up. And, I think that's the thing that I come back to. It's like and we both have great families, but like what's normal in my household and what's normal in Jill's household, just on little things, is so different. Yep. But so there's a part of that process that's like a journey, learning how Jill's family has handled things and how Jill processes things. But it's equally been eye-opening for me to think back about how I do that. And I wasn't always self-aware about how I handled certain things because I just thought this is how we do it. And then I realized, and it's funny, we've been married 16 years. We still have things like that, right? Like, and it's, new things will come up. Your kids will get to a new age, and there's things that, that I think we're going to do that are really different than what she thinks we're going to do. And then when we stop and talk about it, it's like, well, why do I feel that way? Why do I feel such strong feelings about this? And most of the time, it's stuff that I don't need to have strong feelings about, right? And so part of that learning how to show grace for me has been not only becoming aware of how Jill is processing things, but becoming a little more self-aware about how and why I process things.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I think that's been a huge thing for me is I feel like I lack the self-awareness sometimes in terms of how I was brought up and how much that actually gets sort of grafted into what you do in everyday life. And an example of that was early in our marriage. When I'd eat with her family, if David or Beth, if they'd be sharing a story, I noticed like everything would like shut down, like all the children would just kind of fold their hands and everyone would. And in my house, 4 boys, it's like whoever talks the loudest gets the floor. And so like, even if there were times where David and Beth would come over to my house and it was just kind of a free-for-all, and you'd look over at David and it's just like eyes wide open, like why is no one quiet, folding their hands and listening? And so she would tell me after, she's like, that's disrespectful, that could be seen as, I know that's your family, and so it's not necessarily bad, it's just different, but that difference could make someone feel disrespected just by the way that they've always done life. So that's a great point. I had to, over the years, just say, oh, okay, that's not necessarily normal for everyone else. Yeah. That's my normal. And how does that make someone else feels.
And then as we start to raise kids together and create our own home, how do we take those two and graft them together and make it something that we're both happy with and we both want? Like I would sit there at their table and everyone would be talking so loud and there would be multiple conversations going on and his poor mother would be trying to say something over the 5 men in the house. And I'd be like, listen to your mother! Like, she's trying to
She hit me on the arm so many times, like, your mother is trying to say. We're like, yo, if she wants, just talk louder. It's simple.
She's got mini black pats before, like.
Just talk louder, that's all.
Well, I think that's one of the things that's cool that we can all mention is that self-awareness, because it's growth for us as individuals, and it does play into grace with yourself, because you're not always going to get it or see it or know it, and then grace with the other person, And it lands on, to me, a thought of why I think HiLo is so important, especially, I know, at a season for me, Springfield not being my initial home, but having children to be able to reach out and go, hey, is this normal? And in a respectful way that's not like, throwing my husband under the bus, but being like, okay, seriously, I am a bear when I wake up in the middle of the night, feeding these kids or this or that, like realistic things that you're walking through. And I think HiLo for us gives us a chance to connect. But I think that's also so important for the guys in our world to be able to say, yeah, I get that too. And I just, that's community, that's the body of Christ, that's what church is for us, and I think that's why it's so important, whether it's COVID style, and still reaching out and connecting, but I think that's why these conversations are just so important, because they make you feel, I know, Jill, you've said it so many times and I love it, I'm like, it makes you know this is real life. This is being vulnerable and sharing those things makes you feel like, okay, I can be real too, to go, yeah, no, I totally get, like, I feel that on some level too, and it helps to go, okay, we can just, it's one step in front of the other. And so community helps, I think, with that.
Absolutely, it's so important. Yeah. And I think for our HiLo community, we just want you to know that you're not alone, and we're all in the same boat. We're all on the same journey of trying to grow loving relationships and parent together and serve Jesus in the best way that we can. And it's funny sometimes and it's painful, but it's beautiful. I mean, just last night, our 7-year-old was up like for 2 hours in the middle of the night, scared of something, so I was up with her. And then this morning, I'm like, you're making the bed. You're doing all the stuff.
Yeah,
because I was up.
I definitely slept straight through that. I was like, really? It was a great night's sleep. So
again, it's like a daily process, just choosing that grace and setting those expectations. And, it's just going to be beautiful in the end.
And learning that when she doesn't get great sleep, for me not to wake up and be like, oh, just great night.
It's not helpful.
Yeah, it's a process.
So some of our wonderful ladies sent in some questions that they kind of wanted us to touch on. So do we want to chat about those?
Can I just throw one out there and we just kind of see where that one lands? Okay. So everyone, what are some of your favorite ways to infuse Bible teachings into everyday moments within your marriage or your family, what that looks like in your home?
I think just in general, I think the question of how do you do that with kids is an interesting one. I think sometimes you guys probably feel this too, being in ministry. I think sometimes it's easy to think, well, people in ministry just have that easy. It's not. It's the exact same thing any household feels, and I think we've tried lots of different ways to try to do Bible study as a family, and some of them have been great, and some of them have just been absolutely terrible. Like, this didn't work at all. And usually the ones I tried to do are the ones that are just, you like think that we're gonna do this family devotional, it's gonna be all awesome, and then about halfway through, our 7-year-old is like looking around on the floor for stuff, and my 13-year-old's falling asleep, and you just kind of, this didn't land. So I do think in that sense, a lot of times it's those everyday things are just better teaching moments than trying to say, this is the thing. And I think it's also important to help our kids see, because I think this is a journey we've all been on too. Our spirituality isn't something that we keep in a box and just get it out and look at it on Sunday. It's got to be, our walk with Jesus has to be infused in everything that we do. What we're doing right now, we just actually started something new, and it's sort of working for now. Since our kids are such different ages, and our older two are getting to the age where we really want them to take a little more ownership in their spiritual life and devotional life. We let everybody in the family choose their own little Bible study plan. And we like to use YouVersion. We also have some great resources from Central Kids and Central Youth we sometimes use as well. But right now, everybody in our family could just pick their own reading plan, and they do it at their own pace. And then what we've decided to do is sometimes when we're together, sometimes we do it at dinner time, not always it works out at dinner time. Sometimes it's when we're getting ready for bed. We ask everybody how their day went, and our questions a lot of times are, what was your favorite part of the day? What was the worst part of your day? And now we've added into that, what are you reading in the Bible? Like what's one thing you learned from your Bible study plan today? And just everybody checking in, but everybody feeling the freedom to go at their own pace has worked pretty well there. And it gives opportunities too, since I know what our son is reading. When I see those everyday moments come up where I can make a connection there, I can do that. And when my daughter, says, the same thing, like we'll be riding in the car, we'll just have a chance to talk about it. So it's finding, I think the big thing is finding entry points to just have a casual conversation. I think the more highly curated I've tried to do things with our family, it just doesn't work. But when we have those just little conversational moments, that seems to work out way better.
And doing things that work for different seasons. We've tried things that, have failed. And then also we've tried things that have worked for a while, and then we need to change them up. And my initial response can be like, oh man, did we fail at that? No, it's just that we have a new season and everybody's grown up in a different, everyone's a different age now. And so we're going to try something that works for this season.
Yeah. Constantly adapting.
And even honestly, we get it a little bit on seasons of the year. So like Christmas time it's one that our kids, we've gotten into certain traditions and routines of discipleship or devotional time during the Christmas holidays or spring. And so even seasons of the year, our shifts on how we do that and how we interact with our kids on that. And our kids are 4 and 6, so they're not all reading their own reading plans quite yet, but it's still, the time of the year dictates a little bit that too.
Yeah.
That's exactly it though, because the stuff you figure out when your kids are 4 and 6 work really great when your kids are 4 and 6, but when they become 8 and 10, it's going to be different, and when they're 13 and 15, it's going to be still different. And being okay with that, and just the change that precipitates and everything, including the way we do family devotions in our devotional life.
I remember a couple, she was actually one of the bridesmaids in our weddings. They were a little bit older than we were, but long before we were ever married, I can remember going and spending time with their family and their girls. They had 3 girls. And I would go and I would stay the night at their house. They were like family to us, just so I could spend time with the girls. It was the surrogate aunt kind of thing. But they would always include me in their nightly routine of reading to their family, and then each one of the kids would go around and pray, then the mom and then the dad. And that just stuck out so much with me that I remember telling him, and then we have done that with Lucas and Livy, just simply because it gives them a chance to hear us talking to God, and it gives them a chance to get comfortable talking out loud to God with their family. I mean, the people that you're going to want to pray with you through your lifetime. Until my parents were in heaven, it was calling when you need to, can you pray with me about this? So I love that it's those kinds of simple moments. And I mean, their prayers are obviously 4 and 6-year-old prayers, but it's just precious to be able to lay that foundation of, and yes, their Bible plan is us reading to them. And so, but it changes throughout life. But you want some of those consistencies, the openness for your kids to share with you is what you're working on even now,
Well, I think that's a really good point too, Janet, about how do you model those things. The kids, I've actually found myself thinking a lot. I still to this day have like these memories of my dad sitting in his chair reading his Bible. You know my dad, you know the chair, Steve. But I see him reading his Bible like daily. He's a doctor, he's either reading a Bible or he's reading a journal of medicine every time I see him. I've felt myself lately feeling really strange because I do most of my reading through apps on my phone, but if I'm sitting there on the couch looking at my phone, it looks like I'm just looking at Facebook or something else.
Yeah.
So am I modeling things the right way? And what does that look like right now? But thinking about it in my own life, like that's a really big deal in my memory, and I know it is in your friends and what you guys are doing too. And how do we model those things? I think that's an important part of everyday life too.
It's so funny that you say that, because I just in the last few months have started changing that and making it feels funny to say it, but instead of on my phone, because they'll just think I'm texting or scrolling the internet, and that's not helpful. So where I could read it on my phone, I just pull out my Bible, and I've just like switched so that I want them to see that, I want them to make that distinction. That's what I'm doing in the morning. I've been having them during breakfast time watch The Central Moment with Pastor Jim. So we watch it together while we're eating breakfast, and a lot of times they're asking me questions the entire time because they're 5 and 7. What does that mean? What does he mean? So there's a lot of explanation that has to go into that, but I'm loving that routine right now, and we do family devotions every night also. You give me something to look forward to when they're older and can read on their own, but right now we do it as a family, and it's kind of funny just hearing their responses to it. And there's a lot of, a lot of theological things that we're reading through, and Maddie, our 5-year-old, will ask questions. Well, how can I follow Jesus along the path if I can't even see him? And so then Gemma will just say, it's just like real deep thoughts and Bible stuff, Maddie, and it's hard to explain. So we just have to talk through. It's answering a lot of questions, but trying to build those routines.
Yeah, and one of the other things that we found to be helpful, and let me preface this by saying we're not amazing at this yet. Like, we try. We try that from when I get home to when they go to bed, like that is them time. And so put the phones away, like put them where you can't touch them, can't see them. And like I said, we need to be better at this because we come up with the lamest excuses like, oh, it's partly cloudy. We should, we don't have to do it tonight. But basically within that, what I found to be really helpful is to sit down with the girls, and I do this every time. We do this every time with them. Tell us about your entire day, like start to finish. And then we're like, oh, I had lunch. No, start from the beginning. Oh, well, I went into Miss Zay's class. We did our morning work. And sometimes things will pop up. Viviana, we played at recess, and this and that. Oh, Viviana, are you friends with her? Yes. Not many people were playing with her, so I went over to her and played with her, or something like that, where it's like, why did you do that, Gemma? Oh, because I just felt like it's the right thing to do. So I feel like even those tangible moments where they go through their day, because it helps them process, it helps us obviously engage with our kiddos, but it brings up certain points at times where we can point to a biblical principle that actually they've applied and maybe they've not even realized it. Right. Yeah. And so that's been really helpful. And I think our girls are 5 and 7. That is very helpful more than I think when they're 10 years old, you go a little deeper where they could read a passage and Gemma won't say, oh, that's just deep stuff. We won't understand it. She'll actually understand and be able to grasp it. But I think those macro, overarching points of like, let's be kind, let's show the love of Jesus, because every time they go to Sunday service, the first thing we ask them was, what was the central point today? Because that's really big for them. Like, what's that one point that you're going to take from this that hopefully we can build on? So, it just depends on what age they're at. But for where we're at, that has been a huge way of just kind of using those moments for biblical principles.
Yeah. And like what I'm hearing from all of us too is that little moments accumulate to big things. And a lot of times we can think we need a plan, we need to be we need to be getting through the Bible, this many chapters, whatever. And yet you talk about your dad just every day, you seeing him read his Bible, and you talking about, these everyday little things, I think add up to bigger than what we can realize in the moment when we are in the day and we see this one little piece. But that they really do add up to bigger things.
Attentive eyes. We're going to plug every point we can. Attentive eyes. And, another question that we got was, how do we find alone time during quarantine and all things COVID as a couple and then as an individual that we could kind of speak to as well?
Does it say how or can you?
Seriously. Is it possible? Is it possible? Yeah.
I have the distinct advantage that my wife's Janie gets to stay at home. I get to go to work. And so as she tells me all the time, I've got 15 minutes in the car each way that are without kids pulling on you, without those conversations where I've tried to be more intentional about being more intentional even with that time, driving or time that I have. That's kind of where I've factored into some of my alone time anyway, where you don't have the responsibilities.
You have an hour in the car by yourself. What are you doing with it?
Many days I come home for lunch.
You guys have discussions about
about that.
Yeah, many days I come home from lunch, so I get 15 minutes there, 15 minutes home for lunch, 15 minutes back to the office, so I get almost a full hour.
You're just swimming in it.
And then the being right part of me says, it's only 11 or 12 minutes to work, so I really only get
Some days do you come home through Branson, take the long way around?
Yeah. So for me, honestly, like you said, when you get home, it's especially young kids, and I'm assuming it doesn't get easier, but it's about the kids, or it's about the family, and finding that time at home is tough. So I've been trying to be more intentional about my time, even in the car, where I'll turn off ESPN radio and listen to a podcast or listen to sermons or whatever and catch up that way. So that's, for my personal alone time, that's been easier for me, is I get to leave the house.
Yeah. I mean, COVID totally changed. Even as a stay-at-home mom, it was still, hey, we could go out and do things, or there were friends, there were play dates and things you could connect in. And I felt like the only time during my day that I could ever get a nugget where I was not needed was if I got up before them, which then the domino effect of, well, then I need to go to bed a little bit earlier too, which that was then our time, so it's that constant balance of, where is that? But the slight introvert of me needed time where I did not need to be needed by everybody. I mean, by everybody too. And
I'm a needy person sometimes.
But just where there was, me and a coffee cup and Jesus, whether it was Central Moment or honestly, sometimes it was just reading, one of the people that I follow that's a mama on that infuses that, okay, I can do this with the Lord's help, I can do this. But it was just that quiet away in the morning, and because it changed that. There wasn't like the breakaway time that you could have. And so I know that's what it was for us. What about you guys? How do you guys, or as a couple?
It's funny, I come home sometimes and we homeschool, so this hasn't been super, super different for us during COVID. It is like the way co-ops work and the activities they can do are different, but there's just some days I come home and I can tell that Jill needs to just kind of tap out for a minute. And she, in fact, occasionally she'll even I'll walk in the door and she'll say, I'm going to be done for a minute. And
I'm tapping out.
You're taking over all this. And
Tag.
and there have been a few times where that, like I've had to learn to be gracious in that, because there's no guarantee that just because I got to leave my day was easy.
Right.
But she has no way to know that. I have no way to know what all she's done. So us trying to figure out that space between about 6 p.m. and 8:30 becomes really important for us to show each other the space that we need and to try to be sensitive to that, right?
Yeah.
I think that those hours are probably like everyone. That's the time. It's like it could be fraught with discussions or good family time. I don't know, just like based on the day. But same thing for sure for us. And I feel a little blessed in the discussion because our kids are back to school 4 days a week. And so those days, we work together, but that's not always, it doesn't mean we get time together there either. We're doing our different things. So we do try to get a lunch together one time during the week. While the kids are at school and while we're at work, but we just take away from the office and go do that, because it used to be when our kids were smaller and went to bed at a pretty reasonable time, at the same time every night we could get some alone time at night. But we have a 7-year-old who's a bit of a night owl, thanks to him. And so some nights it's 10 o'clock and she is just still talking and hey mama, hey daddy, what do you think about this? And we're just go to sleep. And then Maddie, our 5-year-old, is up at 6. And so either, it's like bookends, either time. And so we're realizing we get no time in the house by ourselves. So we have to take it somewhere else. So even if you can just, tag team and, give each other your own 15, 30 minutes at some point during the day. Or if there's any family around, that you can be just take our kids for an hour so that we can have an hour of alone time.
And you make an interesting point. You mentioned about being an introvert, and that's how I am. And so the interesting thing is for my work, I have to be the opposite.
Exactly.
I have to get on the phone, I have to meet with people. And so when I get home, and she's been amazing at this, and I'm not pandering, but she's been amazing at this, which is she's like, go work out, go do this, like go do the things that help you recharge. So some of it I think is understanding, how does your spouse recharge? Like what is it that's gonna fill their tank back up again? And the same as you, Carter, there are times when I've had a rough day, but compared to maybe what she's experienced with the children, whether it's on a Saturday and she's trying to clean and you open the door and all you hear is just mama at the top of, she's like, if I hear my mama again, like I'm gonna, she's like, tell him mama's not here. And so there are just times where it's like, all right, you step up and say she needs to recharge. And so, yeah, I think it's a little fluid. I don't think we ever have like a set schedule, like this is gonna be your night. That's not how we do it per se. I think sometimes it's just understanding. I think we've been married long enough to know, we know the times when it's serious and I recognize, ooh, I better do something right now. And then, but in general, I think there needs to be a healthy amount of, all right, we're gonna get our separate alone time sometimes to recharge so she can check out her mama stuff. Yeah. She shares with me a copious amount of mom memes, and I'll just hear her up in the bedroom just giggling, and I'm like, mom meme? Yep, really good one, you gotta check it out. I'm saving this one for you. And so,
like the one where the kid goes right by the dad on the couch to ask the mom in the shower for a snack, you know?
But yeah, so
I don't know.
so it's it's definitely, it's fluid. It's not a science per se for us, but they're definitely understanding what the other one needs is huge.
Go ahead.
One of the things that just kind of happened for us when our older two were like 5 and 7 was we started on a Friday night. We call it a 2-kid sleepover, like where the kids would get to have a sleepover together. We kept an extra toddler mattress, and we just put a toddler mattress in one of their rooms, and they got to play games. And then, at a certain time, we would come and give the password that meant that they needed to be quiet. But that has continued all of these years, so now we call it a 3-kid sleepover, and it is like the best thing for a Friday night. And sometimes we kind of talk to our oldest about like, you're gonna get a reward for this, like tomorrow we'll do something special, or trying to, we just make it fun for all 3 of them. But it is like the best time to watch a movie. And it's a Friday night, and it feels fun for them. Yeah. Or we say like, you get to eat a snack up in your room or whatever.
The rules will be bent severely.
That's
so
right.
That
it'll borderline
stay
broken.
Up and,
because we're like, we really just want to watch a movie together.
You can play a game.
Right.
You can stay up until 10, and then lights off. We're just not coming up there again.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's good.
That's really fun. It's a
Our
good idea.
7-year-old has gotten bought into that too, so she'll come down and like queue up, turn on Netflix, and put snacks out on the couch, and she'll set up a date night for you guys.
I love that.
That's fantastic.
That
She
really
like
is.
pours
Is she for hire?
juice.
Which, as an aside, point of clarification, I want to ask about something is we always kind of discuss, not argue, about screen time. I don't know if you guys deal with screen time yet or what the case may be, but is a 30-minute National Geographic episode considered screen time? Which I contend, no, there's an asterisk by it because it's educational. What say you?
As a homeschool parent, I am all about, this is educational.
Right?
This is so educational right now. We are doing this because it's good for my sanity, and it's educational.
That was a discussion,
they're learning something
a
else.
very cordial discussion that we were having this morning. And so,
I think that's a discussion over too. I still remember one of our kids. I said, you guys want to watch something on TV, and my son went, does it have to be educational?
see, there's a distinction there. I agree. Okay, we've settled it right here. It's
Well,
official.
if I can add one other thing to attentivize for just a moment. I know we talk about like either sending like kids to family or do this to have that alone time. I think I mentioned we don't have family up here. Like the friends that have journeyed decades are that family. And I know for Christmas, that's what the McDaniels gave to us was they were like, hey, we want to get together and do something and we're like, oh yeah. And Jill was like, actually I was thinking Lucas and Olivia could come over and you and Steve could like go out. And we're like, what? Like someone's going to do that, because everybody's schedule with everything and with Project Rescue and with church and then even as a coach, like schedule's just tough. And then who you maybe take your kids to, or this, but it was the attentive eyes to meet a need that said, hey, so I think that's a point, is to look around to see where the places are that you can bless or fill a need, you know, for people that maybe don't have all of those resources right at hand, you know, to say, hey, we love y'all, but let the kids come over, which is not a small feat, you know. I mean, you're taking more on when you have more already, or have your own already. But it gave us a gift of just time, and gave, you know, Steve a chance to go shop some of the aisles with me, which was filling my bucket, whether it filled his bucket.
Thank you guys so much for that. It was fantastic.
And you know, but so anyway, that point being, you know, sometimes it's not even just about the alone time we can find, or the alone time just for us, but it's looking in your circle and your people to say, hey, right now, let me see in a different way how I can be a blessing, because that was huge to us, you know. And so I just a tidbit to have attentive eyes and look out beyond just right here, you know.
And that's such a good reason that we are part of this HiLo community, and that we do this whole group is so that we provide opportunities to develop relationships that can do that.
Well, I think we've covered so many questions today, just fun conversation. Are any other things that we'd want to share? Any other nuggets?
Have we covered as many things as you guys have wanted us to cover? And you've covered probably a lot more than you expected to have to.
We feel like we've overshared as men.
You've done such a good job.
I'm good for like the next year. No, so.
We hope that you have enjoyed this time with us, and we are just praying that this is a great month for you and your relationships, and most importantly, that you remember that you are loved by God and loved by the HiLo community. Please reach out to any of your community members, your gathering groups. If this is a hard month for you or a great month for you, we just want to connect with you, and we just thank you for being with us today. And thank you guys for being our special guests.